Former Uber CEO Travis Kalanick resigned from the ride-hailing giant Tuesday, the latest in a series of scandals and shakeups at the company that is raising some big questions about the professional culture in Silicon Valley. Over the past few years, tech's biggest companies, including Apple, Facebook, Google, and even Uber, have been recruiting more diversified workforces and are trying to open up their corporate cultures. But for all of their innovation, empowering women and minorities remains a challenge. Connie Guglielmo is editor-in-chief for CNET, and she joins me now. So, Connie, you've got a really good article on CNET. You say that tech companies don't have a diversity problem, they have a management problem. Explain.
So what we're seeing is for the past few years, these tech giants, as you mentioned, have been trying to diversify their workforces. And the excuse that they've been using is that they just can't find talented women and minority engineers or staffs to join their companies. And remember, when I say staff, I'm not just talking about engineers. Companies are made up of HR, marketing, product management, all sorts of people. And so when we see management problems at a company like Uber, which has shown that it's not just sexual harassment and sexual discrimination, but really unprofessional business practices, you have to start to question, who are these managers running these companies? Do they understand the benefits of diversity? Do they understand why in 2017 to be a thoughtful leader of a company, you have to make diversity as much a management goal as the bottom line? And we're just not seeing it at these tech giants until someone takes a stand against the managers, which is what happened this week to Uber.
I do find it pretty remarkable that they say that it's a struggle to recruit people. It feels as if a lot of the folks coming out of Stanford and Harvard and some of the schools that train people and educate kids to work in Silicon Valley are coming from Southeast Asia, they're coming from China, they're coming from other countries beyond the United States. In other words, there's plenty of people here, but there's also a wide range of people outside of this country or kids who are first-generation Americans that are seeking to make their fortunes in Silicon Valley.
That's absolutely right. So then you have to ask, is it a talent pool problem or is it a management problem? And what I think, and the reason that I wrote that piece today, is that what we saw at Uber is that it is definitely a management problem. You have a culture that sort of endorses this bro culture attitude that we've heard about. Very party, very aggressive, very very bro-oriented, I'm sorry to say, and it leads to unprofessional business practices. So you have people perpetuating that, you have managers perpetuating that, and it goes all the way to the top of the leadership ranks. And what we're hearing is, oh, these companies are so diversive, but they're really not. And they're using the excuse of, oh, we're being disruptive, we're being innovative to break rules. But really, when it comes to dealing with people, it's about building the best teams. And the research has shown absolutely that the diverse teams are more successful. They're more operationally efficient. And if I were to say to you, management studies have shown that if you paint your walls orange, you're going to see a 20% bump in sales. Everyone would be painting the walls orange in Silicon Valley. But I say diversity shows those results, and somehow it's being ignored. And so that's why the news about Uber, the people behind Uber finally recognizing that they had a management problem, is a step forward.
It's interesting you mentioned the bro culture. I mean, I worked on Wall Street for many years, beginning in the early 90s, and I saw a lot of that, what many people now term the bro culture. And I wonder if there are some analogies to be made with what we're seeing in Silicon Valley. I suspect that a lot of people thought perhaps not, because it's the West Coast, and the area that Silicon Valley is in is thought to be perhaps a little bit more inclusive, a little bit more diverse, but seems that your reporting is suggesting that it really isn't.
No, I would love to say that we are much more progressive out here in Silicon Valley and California than on the East Coast in the financial industry. But whenever you're dealing with companies whose goal is to be very profitable and be very successful, there's always going to be power plays. I mean, that's really what's behind any kind of culture. In this case, it's the bro culture. It's about power. It's about influence. It's about hiring your friends or hiring people like you. And again, you're ignoring the very, very definitive research that shows that if you have a diverse workforce, whether that's women and men or racial makeup or even skill sets, not everyone needs to be an engineer to be part of a successful tech company. If you ignore that research, you're not going to do well. And even if you are profitable, that's one of the excuses that we hear, well, tech companies are doing great, even with these very poor diversity numbers. What does that mean? Well, in all my years as a tech and finance reporter, I've never ever heard a CEO say, I'm happy to leave money on the table. I'm not going to paint my walls orange because I don't need a 20% lift in sales. So
final question, Connie. I mean, what can these companies do? Obviously, if they're making money hand over fist, it's working. What's worked in the past is going to, in the minds of a lot of people, continue to work. What's the incentive for doing what you're suggesting? Well, two things. Number one, in the case of Uber, it's gotten them a lot of bad PR. People have not liked the stories they've heard about the culture there, and it's affected their customers not wanting to use Uber, the service. That's not a good thing for a company that wants to go public. Secondly, what we've seen in Silicon Valley already, Intel, their CEO, Brian Krzanich, 2 years ago tied management compensation to diversity goals. So just like you have product deadline goals and you have finance goals, they added diversity as a management goal. And if you didn't make those management goals, well, you didn't get your bonus. And suddenly, when money was on the table, guess what? Intel started making progress toward their diversity goals. So it's about making it a real metric that you want to measure, just like everything else, and understanding that you're not doing it for some politically correct reason. You're doing it because it's actually good business. CNET's Connie Guglielmo. Thank you so much, Connie. Appreciate it. My pleasure.